Welcome to Hangout from Times Ascent. My name is Sujit John, and I will moderate this discussion today. We will be discussing virtual learning, and we have with us three very senior and accomplished HR and training professionals. We have with us Amit Joshi. Amit leads global learning and development, talent, organization development, commercial capability, business, and HR transformation at Merrill. Merrill is a global medical technology and device company. Amit has 18 years of experience in these areas. His expertise includes conceptualizing and developing high-end learning content and mastery in facilitating sales, behavioral, managerial, and leadership development. He has won the Director's Excellence Award for HR. Welcome, Amit. We have with us Subramani B. Subramani is a virtual trainer and facilitator at 4People Consulting. 4People is an HR solutions firm that Subramani founded. Subramani is a passionate entrepreneur involved in executive search, virtual training and facilitation, interview skilling, resume transformation, and business consulting. He has over 22 years of experience across banking and financial services domain in business and leadership roles and in HR consulting and executive search. Welcome, Mani.
Hi.
And we have with us Ajit Kamath. Ajit is a virtual master trainer and facilitator at WizTalks, a company that he founded. Ajit has 26 years of experience in facilitation, training, and speaking. And he helps organizations deliver high engagement virtual and online training and facilitation. In the virtual learning space, he has conceptualized, executed, and delivered the usage of process facilitation methods such as World Cafe, Fishbowl, Fired Skills Practice, Jigsaw, sociometry, open space technology, rating scale, brainstorming, dot voting, and video exercises. Welcome, Ajit.
Thank you.
Viewing this can send in questions in the questions section of this webinar application. I was telling the panelists a little while ago, I can relate to this virtual learning issue quite a lot because my wife is a teacher in a college, and the kind of trouble she faces is amazing. I mean, she has some 200 students on the other side, and she has no clue what is going on the other side. Just the other day, I was talking to a professor friend of mine in Delhi, and he was saying the same thing. He said he would crack a joke and he would have no clue. There was no response at all. So very embarrassing. On the contrary, I mean, these are slightly bigger groups, I guess. On the contrary, my son goes to a new school. Fortunately, there are very few students there. So there are some 11 students. I think he's kind of okay. He seems to be enjoying it. A smaller group, probably that helps. But anyway, we'll discuss some of these issues over the next 1 hour. Ajit, I want to start with you. Before this, we were discussing this. You had said that globally, virtual training and learning has been a prevalent thing. It's relatively new to India. Indians preferred the physical meetup. That so globally, what it has been a very widely phenomenon.
So, yeah, globally, ages back, there was e-learning always there, and e-learning probably didn't work quite well. But when virtual learning started, I think it was about 8-9 years back that I got aware of it. But I got an opportunity to be part of a virtual delivery around about 6-7 years back. And this was being done by the global team, which wanted to have a global diverse audience. So they were running these workshops on at that point of time a particular platform, and people were attending. So it's not that virtual learning or virtual training facilitation wasn't there. It was there. But when we look at a typical, I shouldn't be saying only India. I can say mostly in Southeast Asia, our strong need for face and touch and feel kind of a thing. Probably from the learner side as well as from the facilitator side, was getting into the space of classrooms. Okay, we need to do it in rooms, and only if people are there in front of you will they learn. That was a given. This pandemic made us all aware, including some of us who were delivering, that yes, learning can move seamlessly in the virtual space. I think that's what I would say.
Okay, and you're seeing a big change. I mean, huge adoption of virtual learning. I mean, no choice, is it?
So presently, no choice, because naturally, having it in a classroom, there could be concerns and people may not attend, and the cost. But now, the advantage that the LND is facing, and I know Amit, being from the other side, would be a better person to say, there's a lot of saving in the cost of travel, not only facilitators, but even your teams coming from different places.
Yeah.
So that's advantageous. For us, sitting at home and delivering is also getting advantages. So if you ask me, clients as well as us from the facilitation side would slowly prefer to be more on the virtual platform, with one-off touch points where we may still do a bit of a journey where we end the journey by a face-to-face, or we start the journey by a face-to-face. But it's majorly going to move digital, online, or virtual, as we call it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. Amit and Mani, tell me, I mean, so how are you dealing with this challenge? I mean, was it a big change for all of you? Mani, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So just taking from where Ajit was talking about in terms of, the shift happening now in the Indian context. In fact, I would say there has been, shift was already happening a few years back, and it just became a one-way street now because of the COVID. So, you had these platforms coming in India where people were taking, courses and lessons and going for certifications, which were being sponsored by, global universities, and also a lot of change you could see, especially in the mid and senior level executive segment, who were really looking at this opportunity to upgrade their skills. What has happened now is probably it has become more universal, because now across the levels, across the different kind of streams, people are now going and adapting to this platform and saying that, okay, why not look at this adversity as an opportunity? I've had time to sit back and think, okay, when things become normal, whenever that is going to be, or near normal, or whatever we may want to call it, let me be ready for it. So I think that shift is happening, along with obviously the opportunity and the digital platform making it feasible.
Okay. Amit?
So I kind of relate to what Ajit and Mani spoke about, and I have a little story back then in from the year 2010. Uh, I was consulting at that point of time with one of the major consulting firms across the globe, and we had a global contract with a company, and it happened to be that I was taking care of the entire Asia Pacific region along with the Middle East and African region. So there was a company who wanted to roll this program out. It comes out of US, centrally driven, and has to be done as per across the globe, etc. Now suddenly, the moment it reached the Asia Pacific region, I came across the same, and I said, I'm sure this will not work. And the question was, why do you think it will not work? It's working fine in US, and we've covered all. Well, it was a blended approach and a sales program wherein 1.5 days was to be done online on an e-learning, and another 1.5 days is supposed to be done expecting people to learn online and come in the classroom. And as I told them that you're expecting something which is impossible altogether. Now that was the day 2010 I'm talking about, and today is a different shift. What do I relate here is that whenever we run these e-learning engagements, etc., there is a cultural norm that I have seen that works in place. Now, if you look at US, look at a von Strompena's 8 dimensions of culture, or RW3 7 dimensions of culture, or vice versa. In fact, 7 and 8 there. What it talks about is, and it's a very interesting fact to look. Why is it that in some countries e-learning works great, and why is it that in some countries does not work great? If you look at the culture norm, and when surveys are done across, US comes into slightly a non-hierarchical kind of a approach there, whereas India is more of a hierarchy kind of an approach there. Similarly, if you look at South America, again, is very similar to the Indian culture there. Now, what happens is that in terms of communication, in terms of decision making, we would always look on to someone, right? So the same mindset kind of goes into your e-learning. Now, e-learning is all about doing itself. Now, there is a big challenge of my culture nuance in my head, which is I don't do it by self. I need to be driven there altogether. And that is where we see that the roadblock comes in. And I've always experienced this as a global leader, that in some countries you see a higher rate of immediate rate of e-learning going up, and in some countries it takes a lot of time altogether. So I see a lot of culture nuances which have changed over a period of time. And as Ajit mentioned that yes, this has been there since a very long time. We are seeing this now, and what I believe is that there's also a culture shift happening in our own country today, wherein people are now looking at methods like agile rather than going in a hierarchy fashion. Agile is all about making those intact agile teams and making things happen rather than waiting for the hierarchy to respond there. So I think that culture shift is something which will help us when we build an organization where communication is the key, where we build an organization where we say where goals are the key, not the roles, where we build an organization. And the moment you have such, I think e-learning works great altogether. That was the level of culture nuance that I've experienced in the last 10 years, of course.
Okay.
In fact, you know what, Amit, you are talking about, there's a lot of people are talking about now the learners taking the responsibility. I think it very closely relates to what you're talking about, the hierarchy part. It's not coming from up anymore. People are saying, okay, who's responsible for my own learning? Is it going to be the HR, L&D, or my boss or my organization? No, it's me. I want to grow. And somewhere that shift is coming from saying that what minimum do I need to learn to stay relevant in my job versus what do I need to stay relevant in future. I think that's where the fundamental shift is happening. So there is a movement from acceptance to kind of aspiration rather.
This is happening among the younger talent as well.
Absolutely, Sujit, it's across the board. You can see people just look at LinkedIn, feed on a particular day, and you'll see people coming up with XYZ certifications, new achievements, what new they are learning, and people are happy to talk about it because that's the kind of shift which has happened. Earlier, pockets, some kind of training program being driven by the organization, and people going and doing it. Very few really going out on their own and voluntarily achieving something more. Or wanting to go on a parallel note and do something different, but it's happening more widespread now, and I think the learning has moved away from the learning platforms and it has become more widespread. That's what is happening. We're not dependent on any teacher anymore, so we are learning on our own. That's the change.
Okay.
Mani, I want to put a little bit of a thought around this. So what you said was very interesting and right. But I have been observing people who are putting these posts, saying I attended this session and all that, and people have attended my session also. But majorly, I am seeing a spike in people who are freelancers attending this course or gig. I'm not seeing people actually in organization going ahead and doing a lot of these courses on their own. Having said this, I'll tell you that sometimes the L&D has to push. So if there's an e-learning module and then we are doing a virtual module, let's say they're supposed to attend the e-learning, and then we would kind of create a touch point in a virtual session. We find specifically, and this is where I feel it's more Southeast Asia, where people wouldn't have even attended or completed the complete program. They would have all got a certificate. So it's that they have attended, they will pass a test. Don't ask me how, there are ways and means. But when you are running a session, you realize that they have not picked up the nuances that come from the program. I don't know. So that's a little, I beg to differ whether, so I see a lot of trainers, facilitators, independent freelancers and all that saying, I have done this, I've done that, and there would be posts. So this is where I'm still waiting to observe. So I don't know, I don't have any kind of um, data points on it, but I would say I would really wait and observe to put a saying that this is happening. I have, but the panelist naturally, Amit would know more from the organization side.
So just to add a point to what you're saying, Ajit, I agree what you're saying. There are a lot of such crowd of people who kind of want to display that they've learned, which may have or have not necessarily done. But what I'm seeing a trend is people learning a lot to be able to teach to others. So when you see these certifications, you also see parallelly a whole host of videos being put up on YouTube or Facebook where people are showing themselves and talking about things which they've learned. So it's not that they're displaying a certificate, but they're talking about what they've learned. They're talking about their experiences. They're saying that this is the journey they went through, and this is how they, overcome the. That makes me more kind of positive about this change in the learning pattern and attitude.
So they make money on those videos. Is it money, or I mean, when they put up these videos, what is the objective? They just want to give some gratis things to others,
Okay,
or
so I think it works two ways. One is people are doing it to showcase their work first, which if I just go and say that I do A to Z things, people are not going to really believe me. But if I show that this is what I'm doing and I'm talking about it more and more, I think it creates a visibility, and probably some way people believe that it may build a credibility as well, because more and more people look at it and talk about it and ask you questions and you reply to them. It kind of tests your depth as well. There's another set of people who are just sharing their knowledge, and which is happening a lot as well. They're not looking at any commercial gain from that, which is also happening.
So it's kind of connects me to the Stephen Covey example from one of his books. There, when you go out to buy a packet of peas, right? There are 3 different packets of peas there, and one is like a plain packet, and you see those green peas inside. The second one has some kind of a write-up on it. The third one is a very nice, well-packed pack of peas. It's got its date, it's got its nutrition value, etc. Now, having said all the 3 would have equal weight as well as the same product inside, I'm sure that each one will say, I'll pick up the branded one, because that looks attractive. Now, once you come home back there, from there, you open the packet of peas, you put it in the bowl. But what happens to the packet after that? It goes in the dustbin. But what is really used at the end of the day is the other peas there. But for the peas to be picked up in the first place, I think that advertisement, that packaging is really important there. And if the peas are bad, you'll say the packaging is good, but the peas are not so great. So I think what really I think I can connect to Ajit and Mani as well, that today it's a matter of not just the marketing aspect of it, but what do you bring in as content plus the context value to any organization. So that's the most critical one. Content is available freely today. It's literally free today as you want. But what is getting more serious and needed in the entire L&D and OD fraternity is the contextualization. And that would come in only if somebody really steps into the shoes. And I've done business myself, and I've got those contracts, and so I could talk about those experiences altogether. So I think that's where a blend of how do you drive the entire learning and development, especially e-learning. What's the kind of messaging that you're putting in? Are you putting it in the right way? Like Ajit spoke a lot about the various platforms that are available that are really important today for us to catch the attention of the users. But along with that, I think, what do you do? And how do you build that context and content on those platforms as well is quite critical, be it your self e-learning or a virtual session or any kind of engagement that you do.
And Amit, when you talk about packaging in this digital world, it's so easy to get caught. I mean, that's the beauty. You can say whatever you want, but you get caught equally fast, and it spreads so quickly that within no time you will be nowhere. So that also works equally strongly here.
Absolutely. A lot of questions. Yeah. So a lot of questions coming in already. So this is something that I also wanted to ask you. What are the tips and tricks? This from Kumari R. What are the tips and tricks to build impactful virtual engagement? Let's say learning, in the learning context. I believe in previous discussions you mentioned a lot of tools and all that. Tools. What else apart from tools? Are there other things that you can do?
So I would put it as first is what's for the tips and tricks to work. We need to really look at the virtual design. What's your design that you're looking at. When I'm talking about a design, I'm also talking about that what's the desired outcome that you require from a particular session of yours. Otherwise, there are tricks and tools by the dozen. Then the second is your own comfort with the platform. The platform itself creates some hindrances. So I may have a good e-tool. However, if my platform doesn't support a seamless way of using that particular e-tool, then and if I don't know, So I've seen people asking many learners to come on a particular tool, and half of the people can't log on to that tool. And that could be because organizations typically, and if it's a banking and a financial organization, then there would be more security structures around it, where from the official laptop they will not be able to open any of these tools. So now if they can't open, then you're stuck up. And that's why one of the things, I'll go back to what Amit said about agile. A virtual, more than tricks and tools which is there, one of the things, you have to be very agile. What is it that, how are you planning your engagement? What's the design? How do you want to engage people at certain points of time? What if something doesn't work? Then what is the alternative that I have? So if I'm using a particular tool and it doesn't work, do I have the adaptability to change and move it within the platform tools that are there? So every platform also has, like every platform has a whiteboard. Is it a real powerful whiteboard? I wouldn't say yes always. So we use different boards. Now, what if people can't log into the boards? A person, looking at tips and tricks needs to know that, okay, if this doesn't work, I need to quickly change and bring them to this, and I should have the ability to make people get on the whiteboard of the platform and make them use it in a way that you work towards your design. So otherwise, there are lots
Just a
of tips and
clarification,
tricks.
when you say design, the initial point that you made about design, what exactly do you mean? Can you give an example?
So typically, when we talk about any learning session, right, there is a graph, and that graph will start with, typically you'll see we'll have some warm up or a check-in or introductions. If the group doesn't know themselves, we'll run an icebreaker. But if you're running something for an intact group, then why should you run an icebreaker? And we've seen some
Right.
people running an icebreaker in spite of people knowing each other. Doesn't make any
Okay.
sense. So they could have run a check-in. So that's the design that you need to follow, because first is, people who don't know each other are uncomfortable. The psychological safety is not there. Am I, as a trainer and facilitator, making it psychological safe for people to openly share? Because in the virtual space, I mean, this is something which is very interesting, I've noticed. So when we were in the physical space, you had cluster of seatings and they used to sit behind and different places, right? So someone sitting behind had a view of many people, but someone sitting in the front has only us, right? It's like you're sitting in a court, you can only see the judge sitting there, the lawyers. You can't see people behind. Um, on the other hand, with good platforms that are there, you see everyone in the same screen. Like, probably when I'm talking, others can also see Amit's reactions, Mani's reactions, and your reactions up front, right? Whereas what would have happened in a typical classroom scenario, they would have focused on me and the rest three would have probably been blurred, right? That was the three-dimensional thing that comes. Here now we are finding that we are all exposed, we are all there. And similarly for audiences and the learners, they, if their videos are on, and that's another sad story. Many of them, if the platform even supports, don't put the video on, especially again more in Southeast Asia, because probably the fear of getting that exposure. um, so that's where it's a little tricky. So you need to create a psychological safe space. Once that safety comes in, people are open to have their videos on. They're open to say certain things. Like, if I am thinking, while you're asking me the question, Sujit, about this is getting broadcast, what people are thinking about me. If I say this point, then I'm not feeling safe, right? If I'm feeling safe, I will be open to be candid, and that would be very important in a learning space. So I think we need to create in the design certain graphs that allows people to feel safe, get into conversations,
Okay, okay. I'll come back to the Amit and Mani. Yeah, tips and tricks or the kind of things that you've been doing in your own
So
organization.
for me, Sujit, for me, the biggest I think tips will come once you decide who are you doing the training for. So a lot of facilitators and trainers think that it's they are doing something. They don't look at the audience. I think the biggest challenge comes there. If you are not doing it for the participants, what is the intended outcome and how are you designing your session? If that doesn't figure in the first thing in your mind, then you end up trying to showcase what you know rather than what people want to know. And that's where the challenge comes. You may have a design which talks about 10 tools I know and I want to show, but the audience or the participants are really looking at something different. So I think that becomes a big impediment, and people are looking at any kind of tip. They should look at first the intended audience, look at what they want, and then think of what tools will make that learning useful. I think that's where it has to flow from.
Okay. Amit?
So Sujit, what Mani and Ajit have put across, I can box this up into pure design thinking way. The design thinking as a concept has come in now, but way back in 2002, I've been trained on instruction design, and instruction design is nothing but how do you really deliver instruction and any written material or any program for your audience there. And so things like rapid prototyping, which we talk about today, has already been a part of instruction design and the courses there. Well, having said that, Mani and Ajit have beautifully put this across as a package, saying that understand the audience there. Don't do stuff for the sake of doing it. You're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the audience. So understanding what are the objectives, in place. So to top it up, I think I just have a point to say is prepare, make as many mistakes, and you'll still fail. And you will still have the Murphy's law that your net will not work, your camera may not work, etc., etc. So be ready with a plan B. As a facilitator, always be ready with a plan B. You will face that instance. I think second is what we need to do is ensure we have a balance. And what I've found this in this all these years is we need to decide who's the hero or the star on the screen, right? One is that I can have cameras on all the time together, but then when I have a presentation up and if I still have the cameras, I'll have people, actually looking on to people, because that's a general tendency, right? We always like to look at others' expressions, etc. So one of the tricks or the thing that you need to do is ensure you may not on the cameras in the beginning, but take people through a presentation. Then say that now we need to discuss. So when you're discussing, you are the facilitator and you're the person who's going to facilitate there. The PPT is done. Now it's your time. So when it's your time, you can get the camera on, even from your side, you can get the camera on from the others. And of course, as a facilitator, you might keep your camera on in the beginning to introduce yourself, etc. But then when you do it in small little phased manners, right, people understand, okay, now this is the time I need to act to some point of time, and I'll be good with it. And you'll see over a period of time, people get used to it. Even you get used to it altogether. Of course, there are some basic things that everybody needs to take care of, that not making those typical faces, ensuring that fundamental facilitation skills involves all those aspects that if there's something like a negative point come in, don't show that deception, etc. You need to see how do you filter it out, how do you diffuse those situations, etc., which happens in a real environment too. So I think that is where understanding the audience is concerned. Use the tools accordingly, as Mani and Ajit mentioned, and use the camera wisely. You need not keep the camera throughout on, but just keep the camera on maybe as you require them. Another thing I can quickly share with you that I did is in one of the product launches that we had, we just launched a robot for the entire precise cutting of your bones. So the grafting of the artificial knee can be very precise to the T there. So when we did this with 120 audience, everybody would not keep the cameras on, etc. So we had certain engagements and small little groups and breakout rooms, right? We said that try and make a funny face and get one person from that breakout room, represent that room to make more funny faces. After a period of say 30 minutes, you saw everybody eased out. When you ease people out to have fun, right, it becomes very easy for them to relate to you, and after that it's easy. Once you ride a plane the first time in your life, you have that anxiety, but after that it's easy. So I think these are some of those things I could put across.
Okay, great. Just I had no clue about some of these tools that we previously discussed. For those who are unaware of the tools, which are some of the most interesting ones? You mentioned Miro board and Stormboard and Padlet and I have a whole list. But which are some of the ones that you use the most?
So there are a lot of tools, Sujit, which are there out, and as Ajit rightly said, you need to pick up what works best for you. One is obviously in terms of your comfort in using it, and two in terms of its utility for the session itself. So there are a couple of tools, but which are commonly used. One of the more popular ones is Mentimeter, which has a very versatile use. It can help
Mentimeter.
interact. Mentimeter, yeah. So
Uh-huh.
it helps you. It helps the participants interact with you even while you're making presentations. You can have polls online. You can have quizzes. You can embed a presentation, images. A lot of activities can be done on it, and at the same time, you can get responses from people as you're going through it instead of waiting for the later part. Another tool which Ajit talked about, the Padlet, is pretty good in terms of brainstorming. Same is for Miro. Miro is very versatile. In fact, extremely useful for executive trainings where you want to go deeper, you want to use some models and come up with something which could be really critical, divide people into teams, and it has a huge space. Uh, so some of these, there are a lot of fun tools where you can create online crosswords for people to discover things, or you can, use tools to recap something which you've gone through after a break. When people come back, you want them to be energized again. So you use some of these online tools called word walls or things like that, which are used. I'm sure Ajit can add a lot. Many
So
he'll
you
be
can mix
using
and
them.
match some of these things, is it? You can mix and
You
match some of
can,
these
you
tools?
can. Yeah, these are
Okay.
all independent tools and can be used across many of the platforms.
No. Ajit,
So
Amir,
if
which other
yeah,
ones
so
you
if
use?
I add, I was just writing it down. So one is you have tools for getting data points. When I'm saying data points, you want the voice of the learner. Yeah. So voice of the learner, as Mani said about Subramani said about Mentimeter. Mentimeter brings the voice of the learner. So you send them a link. They would it's for the audience it's Menti. So they would quickly type something and that comes on the board. Okay, so they can see a visual, and there are different, and there are many things internally inside. So that's one. Second is you want people to ask questions. Like here in this platform, questions are being moderated, but there would be Slido. Slido will kind of look at the questions, and if you have a licensed version, you can even moderate it. So what would happen is, Sujit, you would have looked at some of the questions, or we would have looked, and if we have answered it, we would have just removed it from there, and we would have kept the questions in a way that everyone looks at. Okay, and sometimes the answers can go directly from the machine, so you don't need to even voice it. So these are the where the data points are very important. The second is the boards. So why are boards used? And that is where people need to differentiate between the work they do. So typically we find people using the word interchangeably: training and facilitation. Whereas training and facilitation is 180 degrees. And especially, I come from International Association of Facilitators. I'm one of the accredited CPFs, which is the Certified Professional Facilitator. Our certification happens on process facilitation. So in process facilitation, we don't give any content. It's all harvested. So the group, we believe in group wisdom. And so in the morning, I was running a session where I was doing a visioning for a Women in India network. So what happened was we had about 12 people there, and I was harvesting their thoughts. I am not supposed to put, so it's called content neutral. Now, what do I require when I'm doing that kind of harvesting? I would require some boards. So in the physical world, we would put a sticky wall. A lot of people don't know what a sticky wall is. It's we use a 3M spray and paper sticks rather than using post-it notes, which are very small and falls off. The sticky walls help even put up big. So it's a 3M spray we put on a cloth, and we facilitate. Now, how can I do it virtually? I have 3, 4 boards. So Miro is one, second is Mural, third is Storm board, fourth is Storms, and there could be some other. There's Group Map Works also. So there are about 7, 8 boards. Now, what we need to know, and the people who are attending this need to really understand that only few of these boards are free for use, or they will have 3 or 4 boards that you can use. Like Miro board allows you three boards that you can use. So every time you use a new one, it will get. Otherwise, you have to take a license for it. Mural is only free for a certain time. Stormboards is only free for a certain time, or only 3 people can come on the board. So if you really want high engagement, so what we do is we look at the license and we look at suggest it to the clients. Clients pick up the license, and then we can use, because then the whatever comes will become within their space. Otherwise, if I use my Miro board, like today I could have used a Miro board, but more deeply. But my worry was that security wise, then that board, anyone who later on also enters into the board can have access to those boards, and that could be very confidential information. So you'll have to play. I have done a program for a pharmaceutical company where we did some very deep work process facilitation, and we used ideas board started by some Indians, and amazing. I found it amazing, ideas board. Now that's what I was saying. What is it that you require? Then the third, so we talked about data points that you require. You'll use certain tools, boards, and then the fun tools, as Mani said. These could be pure engagement. So there are puzzles. There's an amazing word puzzle. So you could look at Word for the listeners, wordsearch.com. You put in 10 words. You put in 10 words there. It creates a puzzle, crossword puzzle. And what we do is we just put the puzzle on the screen and give annotation rights, and people can start annotating. So I play countries. So for an insurance company, I picked up their terms, insurance terms, and put it up. So and then when I was trained about 6 years back, they told us that you should never punish people who are on time or before time. So I open out these fun tools for people who come in early, and Mani also knows it. He's seen generally in our sessions people don't come late. They would come within time, because if they come early, they get to play something. So by default, 10 minutes earlier people are there, and we just have about 5 to 10% people who would join on time. Most of them 80 to 90% before time. So these are some carrots that you can play.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Then there's
even
something, if
automatic
the
puzzle makers. Wow. Automatic puzzle makers and all now. Huh?
absolutely automatic, you can play bingo. I mean, the other day you can play a bingo. It's like in between you, and you can customize many of these things. It's become so easy. But what happens is many people are not aware of it. Like wheel of names, what I would do is put a list of my participants and play the role wheel, and whoever's name comes, I say, okay, this person needs to speak. Now, because look at what you said, your wife being a teacher, she doesn't know who's there, who's not there. Now the moment I play the wheel, I find now in certain platforms, that attention span, you get a symbol that people are not on your side. The moment you play the wheel, everyone is back into your platform, because now that fear is my name will come and I'll be asked a question, right? So some amazing stuff is there. If we use it, it's
Okay.
sorry, I took a little more time, but
And Amit, you
In
want to
fact,
add to that?
Sujit, one point I wanted to make here, a lot of schools are using something called quizzes. Quizzes
yeah.
is an
Okay.
amazing tool which helps you create quiz for children. And it can be a
Oh,
visual quiz, it could be a textual, whatever. And it gives you marks online. If you answer fast, it will give you more marks. It gives you kind of boosters. So it's like playing a game, online. And I've
wow.
seen my son's school putting them up, and they really love that, those kind of things. So, I
I can
mean, a lot of teachers are
understand.
doing wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mani, just to add, because you're on quizzes, it's better than Kahoot and Umu, which were there for
Yeah.
so many years. Quizzes has come recently. It's much more agile, much
I
more
see.
better. So a lot of things. Yeah, sorry,
Amit, you want
Amit.
to add a quick one on this?
Right. So I think quite a few number of tools available today, and also with the existing tools that you have, if you have a subscription probably of a Zoom in your organization, ensure that you know Zoom in and out. There are some breakout rooms available in Zoom, and the paid versions can give you a number of breakout rooms, etc. And each of those breakout rooms also have whiteboards. And if that is not available, you can have people do an Excel maybe or a Word, and then they can share their screens. But one needs to ensure that the settings that you need to work around should be done in advance, right? On Zoom or any other platform that you're using. So I think use the platform, do a dry run a couple of times, and then it works great.
Yeah.
Apart from that, I think Adobe Connect is another, it's a little of a heavy platform, of course, to in a comprehensive way to run polls. Zoom also has the same that you can run polls, you can have breakout rooms, and then people can come back on the platform there. But having said that, again, the point here is if you do not practice it in advance, I think nothing will work for you.
Nothing will work for
And
you.
as rightly said by my colleagues here, that know what tool is important for you. Don't rush for running it and creating the set of tools to impress. It's not to impress, but to express and help people express. So whichever tool that we use there.
Okay.
I'll just add in to what Amit said, because what Amit now spoke about was platforms. We call it platforms, and that's a little bit of differentiation we use as terms. So tools would be something that I would use on a browser and can work. So Amit brought a very interesting insight. By the way, Amit, most of the platforms now have breakout rooms. Most of the platforms, even GTT, like we are on GTW. So there's a webinar as a platform which doesn't have that much interactivity. So we can't put them into rooms here. But if you look at GT, so GoToTraining, and GoToTraining is a different license than a GTM. So people use GTM. You'll find it interesting. Zoom, as Amit said, has been so user friendly that now, even if you, and sorry Amit, because we work around and we are training people on Zoom and different platforms. Now even if you don't do some setting changes, like if you know how to do it while in the meeting, you can. And there's a wonderful role that has emerged called a producer. So there are some
Yeah.
specialists called producers who will join in and help you. Lot of people don't know this. Three weeks back, WebEx meeting introduce breakout rooms, and I've been running for a financial organization breakout rooms in WebEx meeting. WebEx training, which is a different license, which is enterprise, was there about 7 years back. It is still not developed well, and Adobe is amazing, yeah, but it's quite bandwidth. So one of the challenges with platform is the bandwidth. So MS Teams, no doubt people are using it, but if you see, one of the inherent problems with MS Teams is to make breakout rooms. You have to create channels and you have to send in
Yep.
channels. They have introduced breakout rooms and they've introduced it to some of their big clients. We have been waiting from July to come. So, but the underlying message, what Amit says, and I think we all will agree here, is that whatever you're using, you need to, you can't sit on a new driver's seat and expect that the car will run just because you know driving a car. Every platform is a different car. So my metaphor for Zoom is a BMW and MS Teams is a truck, but both will transport people. Now, how do you want to transport, the way you want to transport, and whether the driver is trained to transport or not is what we will work. So
Okay.
that's
So
another
Ajit, I
layer.
think interestingly you mentioned about this role called producers, and I can go back to our roles that we have played in our lives, whether it was the OHP days that we're talking about, right? I think
Yeah.
today there is
Slides.
a luxury of the role called producer, but I think I'm sure Ajit, I and Mani, we come from this era where we've written those OHPs, then
Absolutely.
came to computers, and I think a lot of hands-on, of course. And sometimes we would get confused if there's a producer in between, I guess.
Right. In fact, just adding to what Ajit was talking about the platforms, I will add one more dimension to it. There are a lot of collaboration tools. So MS Teams goes beyond being a simple meeting platform. It's actually an ecosystem, which allows you to not only have meetings but to collaborate on documents, work together, build projects, and all. So it depends on what you want to use and for what purpose. Ultimately, it all comes back to the same thing, I think.
Okay.
So
So there's a
just
point
adding
that
a
you also
couple of
mentioned.
sorry, just adding a couple of points before I miss out. I was this morning I was talking to one of the partners that I'm probably looking at to get on board in the future, and of course I'm not getting into an advertisement mode there, but he's got a platform which is an end-to-end platform which will actually help you get people on board when they join in. Then the entire journey of getting them through, helping setting them goals, etc. Then we talk about performance enhancement. There are a set of competencies, and I'm now talking a complete digital platform. So there are a set of competencies of the organization which are mapped, and the person starts getting those learning engagements automatically based on those competencies and the interest that he has, plus the role that he has in place. The beautiful part is that if if we program it, we can actually send out pre-reading materials. We can run the program, a virtual engagement with their platform, and then you can send out the post-reading materials. So it becomes like a blended end-to-end journey, and it's coming up as a package. Now, beyond this, I'll pick up from the point which Ajit mentioned in the beginning as the data points there. I think what is also important for us, and in fact, I'm personally looking at picking up certain more learning into AI as well as machine learning. I was speaking to some guy last evening. So I think if we have an understanding of how the backend system works, and if we have an understanding of how data works, and which of your territories across the globe is doing how much of e-learning, etc. Hence, what is the ROI that you're getting out of people as far as learning is concerned? Hence, what is the delta that you see in terms of business and collaboration? So I think these platforms today have reached, giving you a helping hand with not just tools, but a platform and a comprehensive approach altogether to manage your audience learning. And I was, talking to someone the other day that I think we should change the model of performance potential, and we should have another axis called the learning kind of an axis XYZ into your 9-box these days. I think that's the most critical element that is coming out, how agile learner this person is. Over to you.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, you answered that. There's this question from Twisha, Twisha Hathi. Which are the most crucial skills one requires to be an effective virtual trainer? You kind of mentioned it. I mean, of course, knowledge of these tools, when to apply them, practice, are all things that all of you mentioned. Beyond that, to be an effective virtual trainer, anything else?
So I just have
So
a point.
I would say three things. Yeah, Ajit, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to put it like if I was drawing circles, then in one circle we would say content, what, especially in training, not in pure process facilitation. So the content is important. The second circle would be P, which is process. Process is in what's the engagement activity or tool, or what am I bringing in. Till now, generally we would look at the content and the process and run session. The third thing that has emerged is platform, and that has become also very critical. So all these three merging at the center point will be an amazing learning, what do you say, learning, impactful learning that you can give.
Okay.
And Ajit, I'll add one point to that is more of a presence. So, the presence of a facilitator or a trainer and the ability to use these, which you talked about, the content and the platform, I think that that multiplies the effect, because that's where the engagement comes from. So you may have the best of the content, but if you are not really present and you're not able to engage the people, there is no learning really. You're just parroting what you already know.
So maybe we have to look at people from two different perspectives. For Trisha, some people who have already been into training, facilitation and know about those things. For them, these are the three things that you'll have to really now consciously. So people are struggling with the platform bit. And as Amit said earlier, you need to know there are 10 different things I have to do at the same time. Like here, Sujit, you are there, you are helping us, ask those questions, right? Now think if I was running this session, I had to look at the chat box. I have to look at how many attendees. I have to look if someone raises a hand. I have to look at something else coming up. Plus, I'm sharing my PowerPoint. Plus, I am seeing engagement. Plus, I'm looking at videos to see how's it landing. A certain point is landing. So you become like a so what do we call it? VJ was there, video jockey. So now we have become like a platform jockey where you have to look at these things. So that's the big
training jockey.
Yeah,
absolutely. I have only 3 of you to handle. I mean, I can imagine. I mean, it has to be. I mean, there are much larger groups. It will be so much more difficult. Yeah.
No, but the best is you are handling us, right? You are there as a amazing support. Now think about it. Budgets can stop. So in India, one thing we are seeing is people are not approving producers. Whereas the global companies like DDI and all that will not let any training session happen without a producer being officially appointed, right? So that's part of their agreement, and there would be an internal person who gets as a producer, and we would be facilitating or running the session. For individual and independent trainers and facilitators, you are managing those. So we have sometimes got people on board as producers for us, helped us. I mean, Subramani and we have done certain projects where he has co-facilitated. That really helps. So I think that one layer. My suggestion is, if you really want to be effective, you need to also look at having. We'll have to collaborate with trainers or facilitators together.
Okay.
Independently going and doing it could be a little higher risk, because as Amit said earlier, the Amit or maybe Sujit, you said it, suddenly the bandwidth goes off. We have had a session where my bandwidth goes off. It takes me about 4 minutes or 3 minutes to come back. At that point of time, your whole learners can just walk off the call, right? Or the session. And at that point of time, you have a producer or a co-facilitator. I would rather say, rather than a producer, co-facilitator. So the co-facilitator manages the show till the time the main
Got it.
facilitator comes on. So that could be another layer, money that's coming up now. So the
Absolutely,
fifth one.
absolutely.
Yeah. Amit, did you want to say anything? No, otherwise let me ask you this question. I mean, this is again related, kind of, some of you have answered it, but this is from Rupanand Ramachandran. Keeping the audience engaged, what are the ways to prepare the audience for the session and sustaining the attention, stroke interest? Will soft background music help, and a couple of breaks with activities within the session help?
Yeah.
So
Ajit is a big fan of music in the breaks.
Yeah.
I think music definitely helps. So whenever I've run, is that the first 5 minutes before you start the session, it's starting at say 11 in the morning. From say around 10:45, 10:50 onwards, I would have the screen up. So anybody who walks in does not have kind of a empty room, has the screen up there, and there is some music going on in the background there. So people understand that the show is going on, and it's going to go live any minute there. So people will stay. If you walk into a movie theater and if nothing is playing on the screen there, you probably are confused that you're walking into an empty theater. So I think that really helps, in between breaks as well. Along with that, I think what we need to see is how do we prepare our questions in advance, and the talk time that we always have, been kind of managing in the classroom as well. That we have 20% maximum of our talk time, and the 80% talk time from our participants. I think that still remains stable, provided it's a smaller session. Now, I've had multiple instances where I've had sessions for a group of 50 people at a time. Now, what do you do in such cases is use the chat window, and you get into a mode that you don't ask people to verbalize this. You say that, okay, here's a question. What is your thought on this? And you suddenly see the chat window, popping up with multiple answers, and people who are introverts also start answering those. And you'll see, and at times it has happened that I'm kind of running out of time to read each of those comments coming in. And then you again appreciate, thanks everyone for this, and I've seen that very successful. I've also done sessions for 150, 200 people at the same time, which is more of an orientation session, system sessions, etc. And all answers come into the chat window. And you see an amazing participation happening through that chat window, because you'll not be able to get people, I think, beyond a number which is 11 to 15, you'll not be able to make people verbalize their answers. 11 is the max. But if you've got more people than 11 to 15, use the chat window, make people answer questions, get them into groups, breakout rooms, go into the breakout room, have a small quick discussion with them and come out. I think such things, can definitely help you.
In fact, what, Amit, you are trying to say is exactly what works in a session. Different people respond to different kind of, provocations, I would call it, because not everyone comes and speaks out. Not everyone chats. Not everyone responds to some kind of a image or thing. So I think you, as a facilitator, you try and incorporate various things for various learners within the group. By understanding that, I think that makes the engagement really good, because then everyone gets a chance to do, at least majority get a chance to interact and speak out in the way they are comfortable.
Absolutely, Mani, just a small point here. I'm sorry, before Ajit gets started, a very valid point that sometimes people think if there was a lot of shorgul and halla gulla in the session, I think the session went great. And sometimes if the session went very silent, it was not a good session. No, that's a myth. It does not mean that way.
True.
When I do sessions with my regulatory team guys, they are very highly compliant people. They don't speak much, but the kind of results they generate are amazing. Whereas I could do a session which could go a nice halla gulla session altogether, but where are the results? Probably they might be there or they might not be there. So I think just jumping into add-in before Ajit could talk there.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, I just wanted to add one or two bits. So one is music does impact. Music creates an impact. Um, and if it's been used with the sense, as in what time you're playing what kind of pieces. So we were running a emotional intelligence workshop. We had a half an hour session where I played just different pieces of instrumental music, and we were trying to discover whether music can change someone's emotion. And everyone agreed, and we had even a colonel there, two people from the forces, and they agreed. We never thought about this, but music is also influencing, and so there's a piece which slowly makes you angry, and you'll find that everyone starts fidgeting in the chairs. So if that's the question, music has an impact. How you play it, when you play it. So post lunch, generally I would play a XLF or a peppy kind of a music. In the morning, I would play a when it starts, a softer kind of music. If it's a reflective activity, then looking at what is the reflection activity. So when I was doing this visioning, I have some Kitaro pieces which I played, and that just helped. But if I had played something which was peppy, then the reflection would have got
Yeah.
disturbed, right? Second is, if sometimes it's a younger population, you may have to again. So we generally use for designing something called a PETS model. People, environment, time, and the S stands for space, which is the platform. If you have identified your people well, even sometimes playing a musical chairs, we have played musical chairs, and we saw the number of people putting the videos on go incrementally higher, right? In the beginning, you play, it's a check-in activity, musical chairs, someone who gets out introduces themselves, and slowly people use the videos more often and more open to speak. So if the psychological safety, Amit, very interesting, and you'll just love this. So what we do is, in the chat, so if you ask 50 people to chat, there are some people who will look at their manager's chat, their senior manager's chat, and chat like that. Let's understand. You talked about hierarchy at a point of time. So we do something called a chat waterfall. So I tell them not to type the chat, don't press enter, and then I do a countdown, 10, 9, whatever, and 1, and then you see all the chats coming. Now it's fast, you have to pick it up, which why you need a co-facilitator sometimes. But the magic happens is people come with independent points, not with trying to later on tell the boss, see, I agreed to you. So there are these
Compliments.
Okay.
in the PETS model, the E environment, we have seen that in the chat, generally you'll find a manager says something, and as facilitators will notice this, the same guys, team members will also say the same thing. Then we have not done a great job of facilitating with them. So process facilitation requires you to be mindful of the environment, hierarchy, and use certain tools to engage accordingly.
Okay, very interesting. We're running out of time. Actually, can we extend it to a few minutes? All of you are okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Mani, you mentioned different kinds of learners. There's a quick question from Trisha. I don't understand this term, but how would a trainer cater to a kinesthetic learner? Have you
Okay.
heard this term?
Yeah, so we are basically talking about someone who wants movement, someone who is not sitting at one place and who is a typical learner who will keep looking at the screen. So like Ajit talked about that musical chair, that concept is wonderful, which makes people move. So how it does is, instead of moving chairs, play a music and ask people to react to that music. And when the music stops, the one who's frozen kind of picks up and you ask something or interact with them. That's one way of doing it. There are other ways of doing it where you ask people to react in a particular way. For example, if you're doing a role play online, it's not easy on every platform to do, but there are ways to do it. Like Ajit had discovered, and we did a couple of sessions. So you can do role modeling, you can do role plays where you make people move their body, and it shows, because then it appeals to those people who don't want to sit at one place and keep staring at the screen. They are more involved kind of guys. So you can design activities to make it happen that way.
Okay. Last question. There's one from Ashok Chopra. What are the new trends in virtual reality? Our technology is developing in a way that it's becoming more and more trying to make it as offline, I mean, physical as possible? What are the?
So, there was a video doing the rounds couple of days back where IIT Madras did a VR-based convocation. I don't know if you saw that. So, on that stage, you had the announcer announcing the gold medal award, and they had a VR image of the student who was receiving it on the stage virtually. So, I mean, there are amazing. I saw another video of a teacher who was using
Image, is it?
a
Some kind of a
yeah.
holographic.
So there was holographic image, exactly. There was another one where a teacher was using these holographic images to explain a model of a universe or showing animals in a virtual classroom. So I think the possibilities are immense and a lot of work is happening there.
Okay.
There were some conferences in the last 6 months, and especially I think there was one on SHRM where you get a avatar and you enter in as if you are walking in this and you move to a room. So it's like you get an avatar, you walk in, you see the boards and you decide where you want to go, and you can move your avatar to walk into that direction based on what you have selected as your session. That was something which was, and there are some platforms which actually bring that into existence. Quite expensive, but
In fact,
amazing.
yesterday I was seeing some teaser on Twitter where it showed an interview between Mr. Barack Obama and I think Oprah Winfrey, where they both were sitting at one place, but then she revealed that they were both in different cities. And the way it looked was they were
Oh,
sitting in chairs opposite each other with a
Wow.
fireplace burning in the background.
wow.
Just yesterday I saw this.
No, very true. I mean, I think the technology is probably still expensive. Years ago, I'm telling you, this was
Yeah.
in Bangalore. John Chambers of Cisco had come down. He was then CEO. He demonstrated this. I mean, and it looked so fascinating at that point. A person in San Jose and a person in Bangalore standing next to each other, and it looked so lifelike. And they threw a ball to the audience. It looked so real. And I'm talking almost 8 years ago, I think, or more. I don't know whether the technology. It looked like. I mean, at that point, John Chambers spoke about how you could be sitting with your grandmother who's in some other city next to her and all that. But I still haven't seen those technologies develop to the extent. Maybe still expensive. I don't know what.
So I was evaluating on this note on the VR part, the virtual reality part, for example. So I was evaluating a couple of partners, ideally for the safety training. And I think, VR in that way has picked up a little of momentum in safety training. For example, if you're running a factory setup, you've got multiple factories and manufacturing units, etc. How do you train people on escaping from fire? One is just visual, right? One is to you show, but that's got a risk element there. But how do you really pack a person in a room full of smoke? Can you really do that? You can't. But then the VR setup, for example, actually helps you to wear a VR headset, and there are 4 different poles which kind of keep your positioning in place, and you walk inside. You actually crawl. So I had the VR headset on me. I was crawling on the ground in a big room. But what I see is I'm crawling inside a room full of smoke, and it gives me a very near to real experience altogether. Somewhere my mind tells I'll feel choked at the moment. Imagine. So, and I could walk there. Then I have a remote in hand where I can point things and I can keep moving there. It was actually a very near to real experience of, if you're trapped in a smoked room, what do you have to do? Don't walk straight, crawl, so you'll feel, right? The second thing what is also picking up is the maintenance part for a lot of machinery when you're training maintenance engineers. So whenever these things are made in 3D models, right, they are made in shell. Shell is like, it's just a thin layer, so you can keep zooming in and you see the engine, you see the entire machine. In reality, nobody can open those machines and they can show you. But this thing can actually, now imagine if you're doing this wearing a headset, which is the same. So you are actually in the environment and you probably have these tools and you touch the tools, and if the tool is right that you've picked up from the virtual environment, only then it opens up. So it is such a near to real kind of a training program that you can create. But yes, as Ajit mentioned, it's quite expensive. It is like, those 3D TVs, they are good, but you can't watch them for a very long time altogether, because there are consequences of people getting nausea as well. If they have a tendency to, not adapt to that kind of an environment. And trust me, if you wear it and if you walk, it can make you dizzy altogether. There. So I think that will pick up in a span of time. But what is required then after the COVID era is that you can't use the headsets which were similar, which somebody else has used. I think they're very expensive headsets. But I think the future 10 years down the line will be such that you might have an environment or a room altogether with more of holographic images rather than you wearing a headset there. But I think it will take a little time. But such things are available. There are many countries and many high risk manufacturing units are using it today to train their people.
Okay. I think Mani's internet connection finally gave up. Oh, there, you're back. I thought
No, I'm back. I just.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. I think we're very
I could
fast.
still hear you also. That's
Okay,
wonderful.
okay. But anyway, your mobile hotspot held up. Wonderful. Great discussion. Yeah, I learned myself a lot of things. I must tell my wife all these techniques that are available. Thanks so much, Ajit, Amit, Mani. Wonderful discussion. I'm sure our audience also learned a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot from Times Ascent.
Thanks for having us. Pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ajit, Amit. Great being here. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.